Here in Grey Bruce, we want to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of the three fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. And further, we give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. As we meet online, we are joining from communities all across Ontario. Tonight, I'm zooming in from my home in the middle of the township of Southgate, situated in the territory outlined in Saugeen Treaty 45.5. So my name is Barbara Dobreen. I was first elected in 2014 as a councillor for the township of Southgate, and I'm currently serving as deputy mayor. My passion is supporting and celebrating our volunteers. They bring so much heart and a sense of belonging to our community. As a volunteer with Elect Her Now, I have most recently been a part of the Learning Series Working Group. I would like to acknowledge the dedication of the others in the group and those behind the scenes who have shared their talents by helping to gather ideas, resources, and organize the 3 events this spring. The goal of Elect Her Now is to increase diversity at the local municipal table. Today, 35 women are elected in the 17 municipalities across Grey Bruce. This represents just 29%, where women make up over 51% of the population. We want to build a supportive community for those who are currently elected and inspire others who may wish to run in the future. Finding My Balance marks the second session of our 3-part series. While these sessions are geared to newly elected municipal officials, we believe that they will also be of interest to those returning to office and others who wish to learn more about what happens at the local municipal table. It is now my pleasure to introduce tonight's 3 panelists. Jennifer Christie Shaw is the newly elected Deputy Mayor of Erin-Elderslie. Kristin Murray is serving her 2nd term as Councillor in Timmins, Ontario. Welcome, Kristin. Welcome, Jen. And Mayor Lynn Dollin of Innisfil, Ontario. Mayor Dollin is no stranger to Elect Her Now and was featured in our 2021 event, Ask Her Anything. That was a great session. We are so pleased to welcome you back tonight, Lynn. Before we begin our question and answer period, perhaps you'd like to tell us a little bit more about yourselves. Let's start with Mayor Dollin.
Thanks so much, Barbara. But first of all, please call me Lynn. And I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here because after 28 plus years on council, I still haven't found my balance. So the great part about groups like this is it's not just us talking to you, it's you talking to us and learning from each other. I began my journey in 1994 as a local councillor, and I had a 3-year-old, and I thought, how hard can it be? He's going to be in JK pretty soon. Now he's 31 years old, a pilot and a husband, and here I am still. So spent 20 years as a councillor, 4 years as deputy mayor, and I'm just starting my 2nd term as the proud mayor of the town of Innisfil. Part of what gets me through what I do is the fact that I love networking. I reach out. I served a term as deputy mayor or deputy warden at the county of Simcoe. I've been involved with the AMO board since 2011, served a term as president 2016 and 7 to 18, and I still sit now as chair of the Small Urban Caucus. Shout out for the Paris conference, the end of April, the OSIM conference, if you're not signed up yet. And other than that, I'm also involved in source water protection. I'm the chair of the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Water Protection Committee, that a group that looks after the raw water sources for overuse and contamination.
28 years, wow, Lynn, that's incredible, and you have served in so many capacities so well. I'll now go to Deputy Mayor Jennifer Christie Shaw. Welcome.
Thank you, Barbara. I echo Lynn's comment. I'm not sure why I'm here. Just last week, I said in a meeting with Cheryl that I have to start saying no to things because I will. I'm newly married, and I will soon not be married if I keep saying yes. So this is as much an event tonight for me to learn from all of you as it is to, I guess, share what I've tried to do in the last couple of months since I took office or took this seat. So I am in my first term, and I was elected deputy mayor in the small rural municipality of Erin-Elderslie in Bruce County, and I had never considered something like this until our former councillor, Melissa Konmacher, who's behind that Ask Me window tonight, said, "You could do this. I think I can see you doing this. You should consider running." And I participated in the elector events over the last 2 years, I think, actually. And here I am. So I did grow up in this municipality. I moved back to the area in 2019, right before the pandemic, and my husband and I own a restaurant here. So I've got some flexibility being a business owner with how I fit council in with my work. And formerly, my career was mostly in the agriculture industry with a wee bit of economic development and not-for-profit work in there. So I'm delighted to be here this evening.
And we're delighted that you are here. Jen, when you learn the art of saying no, please let us know. I'm still trying to learn that 2-letter word. And now I'll go to Councillor Murray. Kristin?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so I'm just going to do a bit of an introduction in the language. So wache kichitawi siwin mikasosqueo nishnakazan masquadoram. So hi everyone, my spirit name is Sacred Eagle Woman and I'm from the Bear Clan. I'm actually coming to you from Treaty 9 territory, which is in Timmins, Ontario, home to Matagami First Nation, Flying Post, Matachewan, and Wagashig. And yeah, I've been involved with some of the elector events. It's just an honor to be here. I think there was a recognition that there are women from all over the province, all over the country even, and we need to get them elected, right? So I think, by having a little bit of the North meet the South is a great way to share, because those intricacies that happen across the province are things that people should know about. So I do work full-time in addition to being a councillor. I'm teaching at the local college part-time and then doing consulting. So I don't know if I found my balance like some of the other people. I think naturally we just do many things, wear many hats. But I think that's, I think there's a saying, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. Because we don't say no, right? So we're all here tonight because we believe in the cause. And I think, we probably won't stop until we get more women elected. So I'm very grateful to be here tonight. So thank you for having me.
Well, we're grateful that you're able to join us from Timmins. And could you repeat your traditional name?
So so it's Cree. So I'm Indigenous and Jamaican. So pretty spicy, neat mix, I guess. So in Cree, it's Kichita Wisiwin Mikasosqueo, and in English, it's Sacred Eagle Woman.
Wonderful. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, let's get started. Thank you all for joining us. So to ask the guests some questions that we received in advance of this evening. For our guests, if you think of any other questions, please pop them in the chat room to the Ask Me individual. We hope to get to as many questions as possible this evening, and if there is time at the end, being respectful of everyone's time, we'll try to answer those. I will direct questions to a specific panelist, but invite all of our panelists to chime in as the spirit moves them. My job is to keep the conversation moving with one eye on the clock. So let's get started. The first question, I'm going to go to Lynn. How would you describe your role as a public representative, and how does that fit with sitting on council and working with staff?
So I think I would start by describing it a balancing act, because it really is. You're wearing so many different hats. First of all, you're elected to represent, so you're representing your constituents, and that's a really important part of your role. Then you're a steward of the corporation. So, you know, as much as you want to represent your constituents, you can't bankrupt the municipality by, you know, doing everything they want. So you have to make priorities, and you have to make decisions based not only the next 4 years, but what is going to make your municipality successful over the long term, and how that's going to be. And then it's the relationship with staff. So definitely understanding your role in the process. You're the politician, you're a policymaker, you're the big picture person. You're not there to tell staff how to cut the grass or how to work the Zamboni on the ice rink. Your job is to set policy and make sure that staff have the resources they need to enact council's policy. So really, it's kind of a three-legged stool, and making sure that that you're being responsible to all three of those important parts of your job.
Finding that balance. Jen or Kristin, did you want to add anything at this time?
Yeah, I think, you know, when Lynn talks about the three-legged stool, I think it's important to realize too that typically when you're in politics, that's when you really do the learning. You know, when you're outside criticizing before you're a politician, and I know this from my own reflection, is I had a lot of ambition going into it and thinking I'm going to change things, but really I think the partnership or relationship with city staff is so important, right? They've been working and they've been the constant, right? Elected officials change in many instances every 4 years, but the staff that exist within the city have been there for quite some time. So relying on them, you know, they're professionals who have been in the field for many years, and they're really helpful, right? So I think I certainly don't take credit for all the knowledge I've gained on my own, because it's really through the relationships I've built with city staff that have kind of paved the way for my own learning. So I think that's an important piece. So thanks, Lynn, for bringing that up, because it is one of the key elements to being an elected official.
Yeah, I echo Kristin's comment. I think going in, I felt like I had a handle on kind of what the job was and what we did and what we couldn't do, but it still was a steep learning curve, and I'm still learning just as to how much there is. And so, you know, from the outside, you think it's like, here's the things that we need to get done, and then, you know, you come in November 15th and we're into the budget, and there's just such a huge number of projects and things underway, and things that are out of our control, quite frankly, as well, that you know, we have to do as a municipality, and for good reasons, but I think things that the public doesn't really, you know, realize or appreciate, like asset management plans, right? And the time and work and money and resources that go into things like those, that are really important to have, but they're not things that necessarily get seen on the outside. The other thing I was going to say, I just finished reading CUF's Guide to Municipal Leadership, and there is a line in there that stuck with me about how when communities, when communities elect new representatives and they're looking for change, it can also be very easy to fall into the just continuing the status quo that was there. And so I think we have to also figure out, you know, when we need to be bold and make, and push for changes, and when those the policy making that Lynn was talking about, when we do really need to push in a different direction or look to go a different way, trusting the information staff's providing us, but also making sure that we are giving that strategic guidance that is leading to the change that our constituents were looking for when they made that decision at the ballot box.
Mm-hmm.
And can I just add to that too? So part of it too is if you're in a situation where you're in a two-tier municipality like I am, so it's another balancing act, because you're at one table and you're doing what's best for your local municipality, and then you're morphed into where you also swore an oath to do what's best and you do your fiduciary duty for the upper tier municipality, and those things aren't often aligned. And trying to find that balance between what's best for the table that you're sitting at that time and how you represent the broader constituents. And I love George Cuff.
Yes, that was my first book too. Excellent guide. So I'm going to go to the next question, and I'll go to Kristin on this one. How do I best, this is the question from someone, how do I best represent resident concerns expressed to me?
Yeah, that's a good one. And I think, being an elected official, you'll often have a lot of concerns that are expressed. Right now in Timmins, everyone was talking a little bit about the nice weather, whatnot. Well, it's pothole season now in Timmins. So, constantly people have reached out, and it's really about listening to their concerns, right? I think that's most important. We do visually see that there's potholes, and we're not in the season yet where we can fix a lot of our infrastructure because it just sort of deteriorates. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is really listening to people's concerns is key. Everyone wants to be heard. So I typically like to communicate in person. Sometimes emails are wonderful, a good way to communicate, follow-up phone calls. I think also too, if someone is emailing me and I'm not too certain about the question that they're asking, or there's a separate part that needs to involve staff, I may respond to the individual and ensure that the appropriate staff is included so that they can have a appropriate response to the question they're asking or the concern. In our community, we have Service Timmins, so it's kind of like that Service Ontario model where individuals can get service with any department that the city operates. So we would just, direct them to that avenue if it's something that I couldn't respond to myself. And then we have like a unique coding that we would follow that sort of concern and make sure that it's followed through to the end, so it just doesn't get left or dropped. So really acknowledging individuals along the way, and however they choose to do so. Some people will deliver letters in my mailbox. We're a smaller community, so there are individuals, depending on the demographic, whether they choose to email, phone call, stop by the city, or drop a letter. And I think just making sure that I'm being true to myself in my response, right? Acknowledging the individual and just letting them know that there may be other concerns that other people have brought forth that are very similar, but I usually, address the issue as best I can and thank them for bringing it forward.
I think you captured that really well, Kristin. So I'll go on to question number 3. I'll pose this to Jennifer. How do I balance personal beliefs, faith, party, core values in my elected office to not offend others while allowing me to remain true to myself?
I jumped on this one and said I would take it, and now I think I should just shut up and listen to what everyone else says here, because and the reason I volunteer for this is we have had actually now 2 zoning applications. One is coming to our table, one was at our table a little while ago, and very strong response from the public on these 2, and I think this is so important that when we're hearing these as elected officials, that we put all of our personal beliefs aside on it. And the one that's coming to the table next week, there has been a lot of outreach from residents about it, and I in every conversation I've said, like, similar to Kristin, like I understand your concerns. We have to remain unbiased until we've heard all the information. Please make sure that you are submitting these comments into the process. And it's been actually also a really good opportunity to educate people on what the process is for public engagement in things like zoning applications when something's when there's an application to rezone a piece of land or change something, because that is what I have found as well, is that most people haven't understood that, you know, the decision is not made. This is the process. You are in the window right now of when your input is being sought. So please give the input and make sure that your comments are received in the appropriate way. And that's where I've tried to leave it. Like I thank you for reaching out. Thank you for sharing your concerns. And here's how you get that into the official process. And this will come to the whole council, and council will make a decision. So it's been kind of trial by fire, and really I've relied a lot on our staff, and so in Bruce County, our planning, we don't have our planners at the municipal level, they're at the county level. So I've also had lots of conversations with them to make sure that I also really am understanding of the process and that I'm communicating everything accurately. Because it is, there is some where, and I don't know that I expected that I would have such passionate feelings on some of these things, but you do, and so you have to put all of that aside and deal with each as it comes, and make sure that you are being completely neutral on those items. And I will say on the last one, I did have some pretty tense phone calls with some folks after the decision was made. And again, it was just a lot of, I appreciate your concerns, and we will, I will bring those to the folks who need to hear it. This is the decision. I will say Bill 23 has made it challenging in ways, but also things like when, there's multiple housing units being built, which is something that's great for our community. I did find it easy just to blame Bill 23 and say, there's nothing we could do about that. And I was able to kind of dodge dodge a bullet there.
Well, hopefully they're not listening. You say trial by fire. It's a good thing we're all drinking from a fire hose, because that's how it feels some days with learning the ropes. Lynn or Kristin, did you want to go ahead, Lynn?
Yeah, I just want to say yes, because the part of the struggle I find is educating the public about the Planning Act and about the process and how prescribed it is. Quite often, people will come to a public statutory planning meeting, and they'll somehow think this is all the brainchild of the municipality. The municipality wants to do this. They don't understand that if a proponent comes with a complete application, this is the process, full stop. And making people aware that that is how it works, and the reason that the script is so prescribed, and that we have to follow this process, and that we have to come to the table with no bias. We come to the table with bias, and later on we could end up at the Ontario Land Tribunal. So it is, for me, a lot of it is just making sure people understand the entire process and making sure they feel like their voices are being heard. Part of how we do that in my municipality is, as people are talking in a planning meeting, we have staff with a big screen and they're typing, worried about the traffic, worried about the noise. And as they're speaking, they see their words being posted up on this big screen. And it helps two ways. It helps people not, repeating the same point over and over again, but also it helps them validate that, yes, these comments are actually going to be considered.
That's a really good idea.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is tied in a way. I'll go to Lynn. we'll carry on there. Should I stay away from voicing my opinion and support for issues arising from federal and provincial actions that may affect the residents of the municipality? Where is the fine line?
I think for me, the fine line is putting it in the perspective, putting your personal feelings aside and what is best for your municipality. Always keeping your municipality in the front of whatever you're thinking. What is in the best interest of my community? And then be as passionate as you want. I've always found that personally, I'm nonpartisan. I think it's helped me, stay around all these years because you don't alienate a certain part of your population. You don't alienate whatever government happens to be in power. I've been a municipal politician, and when I started, the NDP was in power. And so I've worked with all levels of government, and you don't want to alienate yourself that way either. And I just find that as long as you can voice your opinion, as long as you're polite and respectful. And what I tell my council too is be passionate, debate passionately, debate fiercely. And when the vote's taken, it's over. It's over. You move on to the next thing. It's gone. You win some, you lose some. Everybody gets on board. Whatever that decision is, that's council's decision. It might not be what you particularly wanted, but it's council's decision, and you move on to the next thing. And what I found is the person that you were like really on opposite sides of the issue with, the next issue that comes up, you'll be totally aligned with that person. That's the really great thing about not having party politics. If I wanted, I wouldn't have stayed. The reason I've never gone to another level of government is I couldn't stand voting any way anybody told me. I will always vote my conscience. And that way I can do that. And in municipalities, other than if you're in like Montreal or Vancouver, one of the really large municipalities that have parties, other than that, you're always at this level of government able to vote your conscience. And that's extremely important to me.
For sure.
If I can just add a couple things to that too, like I love what Lynn was saying about the party politics piece, because we have just had really long-standing NDP leadership in our community that has now is PC, which is a surprise for Timmins. We've sort of been under NDP rule for a long time, and now people are very excited because I feel like we're in a position of what you could say power. But at the same time, there's still other relationships that you have to nurture, and you never know if it's going to shift at any point. But one of the other things too is really knowing what's in the realm or scope of council. Sometimes there are conversations that take place at council that have no relevance, right? We're speaking on matters that don't necessarily need to be brought to that particular table. That could get us into trouble. So really being aware of, should I be commenting on this matter, this subject, this topic? Does it benefit the community? And there's always these contentious items. And if you can't have a fulsome conversation about it and really explain away what it is that your opinion is, it's probably not even worth bringing up, because the headline is going to be maybe a snippet of what you said and not everything else that followed, or really kind of teasing out your interpretation or what you meant when you say things. So yeah, sorry, there's dogs barking on.
Mine haven't started yet, so keeping my fingers crossed. I'm going to stay with you, Kristin, and ask the next question. How do I carve out personal time from official political time? What boundaries do you place on yourself in order to protect your personal time? For example, that excellent question about, what if somebody wants to speak with me at the grocery store?
Yeah, so I think in the introduction, thanks for the question. In the introduction, I didn't indicate that I do have children as well, in addition to everything else I'm doing. So my girls have been with me. So this is my second term, and they've been with me the entire time. So they've been in grocery store lineups when individuals have stopped and have talked for quite some time, and they've been super patient. And I haven't really perfected the escape. When you're in a mid-conversation and you just want to sort of moonwalk away, I can't do it. So that's something that I'm working on. I just find if someone has taken the time to speak to me, whatever they want to speak about at that point in time is important to them, right? So I don't want to rush them along. But if it does start getting quite long, I would sort of redirect them to either and I mean by quite long is, I had once been in the grocery store for 2 hours, and I didn't even get any shopping done. But that person needed to speak to me, and they did share some really valid points. But I think it's really about redirecting them to either my phone number, my email. I think my me time is early in the morning. I'm responding to emails. I'm at the gym on the treadmill responding to emails at the same time. That's sort of my peak time. I think I sort of have protective factors around when I'm at my daughter's sports, because I really like to be engaged in what they're doing. So I typically try to, really at the onset of a conversation, just, hey, my daughter is going to be watching me and watching her, and it's important that I, pay attention. So just kind of being aware, and then people will really get to know your personality through how you interact with them, right? And that's sort of that's how I get by. I haven't perfected it by any means, but that's how I've been operating so far.
Ben?
Yeah, I was I also kind of carved out blocks of time, and I think I've just expected now that when I'm out at different public events, chances are whatever the topic of the day is, it's going to come up. And like Kristin, I feel unfortunately a lot of people are so apathetic that if they are wanting to ask a question and they're engaged, that's a good thing and a great opportunity to, again, educate on what's happening, on process, clarify rumors, because there's always, lots of rumors and misinformation. And then if they need more time, again, direct them to set up a meeting. I try to send everybody through email, or we have municipal phone numbers, and our voicemail goes to our email as well. So that has been super helpful. And then a very simple thing I have in my email signature is a link to our citizen request portal that is a place that any concerns, pothole concerns, complaints, bylaw issues, anything can go in there. So it's a small thing, but then at least, people, hopefully they will have that link, and over time realize that, those resources are available as well through the website. So
Lynn, did you want to chime in on this one?
Thank you for those. I'm going to start trying that as well. I can remember my kids when they were little, and I said, I'm just going to pop in and get the mail. And they're like, Mom, no, you'll be gone for an hour. So I'm still learning. And I think one of the things that's really struck me, I will quite often spend Sunday morning catching up on emails, trying to get rid of that inbox. And what upsets me, or did upset me, and now I've kind of fixed it, was I would respond to like a couple of dozen emails, and staff would feel compelled on a Sunday morning to respond to me because I emailed them. So I quite often would remember to hit the delay option so they wouldn't get it till Monday morning. But if I forget, now I have the tagline on my email that says, I work weird hours. Please don't feel you have to get back to me, because I feel bad that staff feel compelled on the weekend to reach out to me, and that's not what I want. It's just those are the moments I can actually get ahead a little bit.
Right. I too, I wrote down a couple of ideas so that I can practice them as well. Somebody sees me keeping business cards at the ready. So, I'm really running right now, or I have my children, my husband's waiting in the car. Please give me a call and we'll schedule some time. Okay, so the next question is for Jennifer. Jen, how do I handle the volume of emails and phone calls from constituents in a way they know they have been heard?
Yeah, I guess I feel kind of answered this one, but I do try to set kind of a, within 24 hours kind of respond guideline for myself, and even if that's just to send a quick email that says I received your message and I'll get back to you with more information. It hasn't been overwhelming yet, so I'm pretty new still. So I think just so for me, it's going to be just trying to stick with those boundaries and not feeling that, because we're going to talk about social media. So I probably get more inquiries over social media than I do right now through email or phone. So I really try to direct those to email as well, because then I can copy in staff and get the appropriate people the information that need it. But yeah, a lot of it's trying to maintain those boundaries personally. And like when I see something pop up on my phone, that I'm not picking it up immediately to deal with it if I'm in the middle of something, and trying to reserve that to when I kind of have set that time aside that I know I can properly respond.
Okay. The next question is for Lynn. What tools can I use to keep the community informed? What works best for you?
Thanks, Barbara. I'm going to respond to that. I'm just going to add a little bit to what Jen said first. And I think another really good tool, and it's something I'm really bad at, but I'm getting better at, much better at, is learning to delegate. So when I first became the mayor, I didn't realize I had two email addresses. I have one that's like my Lynn Dollin email, and then I have one that's Office of the Mayor. And I walked into a grocery store one day and a couple came over to me and said, "Oh, thank you so much." And I was, "You're welcome." Like, what did I do? And then I found out from staff, oh no, like anything that comes in from Office of the Mayor, we handle it, we deal with it. Sometimes it's what's my garbage day, or like a lot of stuff we can just do. And I'm like, oh no. Like if they're thinking they're emailing me, this has all got to come to me and I have to see them all. Well, it wasn't a week. And I said, never mind, go back to the way you were doing it. Thank you very much, because I just got overwhelmed. There was no way I could have possibly, working 24 hours a day, ever got through them all. So really, really happy for good staff and learning with my control issues that sometimes other people can do things just as well, if not better than I can. So then as far as keeping the community informed, this is something that in my mind anyway has gotten harder instead of easier. There was a time we had 3 or 4 community newspapers. Everybody kind of knew what was going on. No misinformation. Everything was edited through an editor before it got printed. Now I find and I know we're going to talk more about social media, but that doesn't always happen. But I really do rely a lot on social media, particularly when COVID hit. So we started these things called the Mayor's Minute. So every day I would do this like 2-minute video about the restrictions and what's happening in the municipality, and really trying to keep people informed where we were in the pandemic. People were scared. There was a lot of uncertainty, and just keeping a positive attitude, asking neighbors to reach out to neighbors, support local restaurants by getting takeout. The town would try to support by doing different things like we'd subsidize the food delivery service to get it to their homes. Just learning, or just letting people know they weren't alone. And I've continued to do those. And I actually met a resident the other day who moved here from Qatar. And he told me that the reason he and his family moved here was he went online and he saw all the videos online, and he said, "Oh, I want to move there," where that nice lady's doing all these little videos and keeping your community informed. So it reached all the way to Qatar. So But locally, I think it works well. Still keeping in mind, there's a big segment of our population that isn't connected, that doesn't want to be connected. So doing that face-to-face. So we do community meetings, not particularly like informal, ask a question, and we move around the municipality, because Innisfil is a whole community of communities, like 9 settlement areas and 260 square kilometers. So everybody except for the very center of town feels like they're left out. So we try to make sure we go to those communities, go to more of the senior communities, go to the high schools, and try to keep everybody and make sure that they all feel like they're being heard.
Thank you, Lynn. I also find it's getting harder to get the word out with one newspaper now and dozens of social media pages and renters in houses, so the newsletter's not getting to them. So we're working through that as well. I love the idea of your mayor's minutes, though. Kristin, this question came in. Can I call my own town hall meeting or midterm community check-in with the public?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think, when you think about having, what comes to mind for me is the purpose, right? And how the meeting will be conducted, who will support elected officials during that process. Because calling a meeting is great, but if there's contentious issues that are building in community, who's going to guide the conversation in a way that people still feel heard, but the elected official who's leading the conversation is not disrespected or abused or whatnot. And that's worst case scenario. The conversation can go very, very well. But I think back to one council meeting where an individual came in, the process wasn't necessarily being followed during the meeting, and someone came in with a rock, slammed the rock down. I think it was the night of my appointment as mayor, which I'll never forget, for the two very contrasting events happening. But situations like that do happen, right? And other people can get intimidated. So if someone's planning a town hall meeting, there's so many intricacies that have to happen, and I would suggest getting others involved, right? So what does it look like from the clerk's perspective? Because you could be scheduling a meeting that you may not have much business speaking on the matter, right? It's probably best if it comes from maybe the clerk. You might have more information, he or she might have more information. And just to kind of put it in perspective for me here in Timmins, I'm the councillor for Ward 5, but there's 4 councillors for my particular ward. So if I was going to call a town hall meeting, I would have to consider, is the town hall meeting for the entire ward? And how would my fellow councillors be involved in that process? And if I didn't invite them or involve them, what does that tell community, right? So, and maybe I just have a very analytical nature, so I would want to make sure if I'm doing something like that, it's done in a good way. And to pick up on something Lynn said earlier is, how does it benefit the community? Right. So if there was an individual who was interested in doing a town hall, really do a bit of background and internal information gathering as to, why do you want to do the town hall, and what benefit does it have for community, and what platform will you be doing that in, and who will support you during that process. So those are just some things that, if I was going to move along with a town hall meeting, that's what it would be. And we did a town hall in Timmins, I think pre-COVID, and it was really about environmental issues. And it was a great one in that we had a high school student, I think she was a college student speak. We had our NDP leader come out as well, people from our environmental services department within the city, and myself. And it was a guided conversation. So it was really neat that the panel had an array of individuals and not just the elected official, but that was one topic. It wasn't sort of open forum. But great question. I think, really, I guess my feedback would just be do some information gathering before you set forth, just to make sure that you're supported through that process.
Well, I'd like to circle back to you, Kristin, on maybe you could share about the night that you were declared mayor. I understand that's a bit of a story.
Yeah, it was a bit of a story. So our mayor, he was running in the provincial election, so he became the MPP. And the way our community works is we have a rotating deputy mayor schedule. So I was deputy mayor. I would have been June 1st would have been on the schedule, and June 2nd was the election. So I naturally became the deputy mayor. But given the time between the time I was made deputy as well as the election, we would have had to have somebody in that role. You can't just have it vacant according to the Municipal Act. So, I mean, my fellow councillors did support me in being appointed. So we didn't call an election. Elections are quite pricey and exhaustive, and it didn't really, we were going into an election year. So I served as mayor from August 9th to November 15th, but was deputy from June. But it was a great experience, I think, but that evening was what I'll remember. But yeah, so it was a pretty exciting time for Timmins.
Yeah. And you didn't run for mayor.
No, I think there's so I'll be very transparent. I didn't necessarily see myself getting into politics. I think when I decided to run, it was really about wanting to see someone like myself in that around the decision-making table. There was no one with young children, no one who looked like myself or my family. Individuals who are working, mainly older individuals making decisions for young people in our community. So I really felt compelled to get involved. So that's how this all came to be. I'm by no means a politician, and I do let everyone know it's not that I don't like being one. It's just, I don't seek to sort of rise to, be the prime minister one day. I really love working in community at the grassroots level, and like Lynn shared a little bit earlier, the nonpartisan thing really fits well with me. I don't have to sort of fit into these boxes, but can just stay true to myself.
Wonderful. The next question. Yes,
sorry, Barbara.
Yes, please have time.
When we did our prep on the weekend, Lynn, was it you that talked about neighborhood nights? Would you be able to share a little bit about that? Because I think for communities that don't have much media, like how we get I feel like there's a lot of value in the town hall meeting, but maybe the format of them isn't always conducive. So can you talk a little bit about those and what they are? I thought they were intriguing.
Sure. I'm happy to. Thank you, Jen, for the question. So town hall, to me, what I envision is one person standing up and, waving their fist and yelling, and other people maybe not as not wanting to speak as much. So sometimes they can go backwards. Sometimes it ends up that one person's voice is way louder than other people's voices, and it's not evenly spread. So, but the neighborhood nights thing we started basically because we were building our very first splash pad, and it was way behind. The contractor was like months and months behind, and people in the community were getting frustrated. So our fire department said, we'll bring the aerial truck, the ladder truck out, and we'll do the spray from the truck in the park, and the kids can all play under the fire truck. And so then the library got involved, and they had a craft table, and then the local food land came with snacks for the kids, and so that was our very first neighborhood night. It just kind of grew from that organically. So now we pick just spontaneous neighborhood parks all over the community, and we pick a night and we just set up this event, and we cook s'mores. We have a little propane fire pit, and the hydro people come and they allow the kids to get in the truck, and the fire department's involved. They've got this little house with windows that go down, so the kids get to aim the hose at the window, and the window falls down in the house, and just lots of fun things. So we just decided that people would be less inclined to yell and more inclined to say, you know, what would be a really great idea is if their kids were happy, they had a icicle or a freezy in their hand and they were playing with a fire truck, that the parents would be more inclined to just open up and think of wonderful things that they would like, as opposed to that pothole on that road. So that's where, so we do them now from like May till August. It's a lot of work and staff really put in a lot of extra time, but it's because we get such great feedback, they're happy to do it.
Thanks for asking Lynn to share that, Jen. I hadn't made it on the call at that point in time, I don't think. Thank you. The next question is for Lynn. How can I be accessible to constituents who wish to meet with me? What if I'm invited to a meeting with groups who want to discuss a specific topic? Kind of lends itself to that town hall feel, but more on an individual basis.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, back in the day, someone would call me, come on, you know, they'd say, we got this issue, I've got this drainage issue, this ditch, you got to come over and see it. And I would jump in my car and I would go over and visit them. I'm less inclined to do that these days. And I advise my council not to either, at least not with taking somebody else with them. You know, COVID's been a lot of things, and I mean, there's been some good things about it. We wouldn't be able to be virtual with a councillor from Timmins if it wasn't for COVID and learning to do this. But at the same time too, I know my municipality has struggled with people who have kind of micro focused on issues that they never noticed before because they're busy in their lives. They were commuting to work and they were taking their kids to hockey and they were doing all those things. During COVID, they couldn't do those things. So all of a sudden they've noticed stuff. And so I did anyway, a lot more phone calls, and especially in the home or around that bubble. Like there's water in my ditch, or the post in front of my house is crooked, or things like that. And always seemed to be they wanted you to come and see it. So I still will, but I am much more cautious about, I won't go by myself. I will make sure I've got either the ward councillor with me or a staff person with me. But more often than not, I will say, you know, if you send us a video to customer service, because really showing me the water in the ditch, I'm just going to take that information and give it to staff, and it's going to lose in its translation. So, and most people are good with that. But the other thing that we're always being cautioned about, particularly from our integrity commissioner, our closed meeting investigators, is don't have quorum. So we have a municipal park, which is right on the lake, that just became overwhelmed during COVID. There'd be, thousands and thousands of people come. Anybody, I think, that in the GTA, or although I can say I was in Wawa, and somebody from Wawa said, well, all these, people from the city, meaning the people from Sault Ste. Marie, were coming up and overusing their park. So I'm not saying it's just a GTA issue, but we had a group that wanted to host a meeting about the overcrowded park. And I'm telling my council, like, don't have quorum. You cannot materially advance the business of council unless you're in a public meeting, a well-advertised public meeting. If the majority of council meets in the park and decides, yeah, we're going to move this fence, or we're going to close it at this time, that's not a publicly constituted meeting. And what you're doing there is breaking the rules under closed meeting, and perhaps causing a closed meeting investigation. But it's very hard to describe that to people. So the lady wanting to organize this meeting is saying to me, well, the mayor's telling council not to come to my meeting. And it's just difficult. So you have to explain that, if there is a quorum of council there, that you can't talk about business, and that you have to do it in a setting where everybody knows where it's going to be, and knows you're going to have that discussion, and knows they can be part of it. So those would just be my cautions.
So generally, it would be acceptable if you're comfortable to hear their issues in a group setting, as long as you don't have the majority of council present. I'd still, I don't know about you, Lynn, but proceed with caution as far as understanding what those issues are going in.
Yeah, I had some concerns. I had some new counselors who were very, very eager to help. And one young lady who, people, very angry people would call her and she'd go knock on their door, and I would worry about her safety. So I always tell everybody, bring someone else with you. If someone insists that you come and see their ditch or their tree or their, I would never go alone. And even when staff come in, when I have members of the public come in to meet me at town hall, again, I have a member of staff, someone from my office sitting in, because they're taking notes and they can follow up on any action items that have to be done, but also so that to make sure that whatever is actually, so somebody can't say, oh yes, I met with the mayor and she told me she's going to cut my taxes in half. Like it's just, he said, she said. So that's why, I know I don't mean to sound so jaundiced. Maybe it's the amount of years, but I just think you have to treat people fairly, but you also have to be safe and keep your council safe.
That's
Once
something.
bitten, twice shy.
Yeah, and like during the campaigning, even that's something that I was thinking that as women, I think we have to think twice about, and probably the like men don't, right? Like when I went out door knocking, right? I didn't want to go by myself, but I'm sure that all of the men that were campaigning never gave it a second thought. And I think on this as well, it's just something that unfortunately it's good practice for everyone because of having a corroborating voice or a corroborating story for sure. But I think from a safety perspective, it's something we have to unfortunately give more thought to.
Yes. Okay, so we're on question number 10, and we did have a couple in the chat. If we have time, we'll get to those. This question is actually for Jennifer and Kristin. How do I respond to people who base their opinions on social media disinformation? Who wants to go first? Jen.
Do you want me to go, Kristin? And then, yeah, okay. So yeah, very good question. And I think just social media in general, right? How do we use it? When do we use it? So I have a Facebook page, and I only have a Facebook page because I don't want to have multiple platforms I'm trying to manage and think about, and in our community, that's where people are. And if that wasn't the case, I don't know if I would have it, because I kind of have a more hate relationship with it now than, but so we don't have a newspaper we don't have a regular newspaper in this area. So really now social media has been one of the only ways we can get information out in our community. So love it or hate it, it's being used a lot by our municipal staff to communicate information. So as much as possible, I try and reshare the information coming from the municipality. I try and reshare community events and things like that. I also share information about what's happening at council. So before our meetings, I usually do just a quick post of what's coming up on the agenda so that people are aware. And then sometimes after, depending on what it is, I'll post maybe something bigger about a particular topic or item. And I have heard from folks how much they appreciate that, because they just felt like they had no idea what was happening. And so it is working in that way, I guess, to keep people informed. I think with social media, you have to also kind of curate, what you have to set boundaries and curate a little bit of what you will allow within the community as well. So so far I've been lucky and I haven't had a lot of negative comments or hate or hateful messages. I think I'm going to pop a link. There's another councillor, Kelsey, I can't think of her last name, but she's from, I think, Kenora, and she's gone so far as to post like rules of engagement. So if you are on her page and you want to dialogue with her, like these are the rules. And for example, if you have an issue or a concern, it won't be addressed via, the direct message chat. You have to email or call, go to the proper channels. And I think that's a really great best practice and something that I also hope to use. So then when people get the wrong information, I think so by trying to put out all the correct information and directing people to the right sources of information, I'm hopefully making sure that they've got the right information. But if it is incorrect, then I think trying to direct them back to those sources, mostly being the municipal website, right? So I know some councillors, Beth Blackwell in Kincardin's doing a really great job of creating content, and I'd like to do some of that, but I also want to make sure that I'm not creating something or telling something that's wrong. So I think whenever possible, I'm trying to stick to what is already out there that our municipality has created and sharing, unless there's something that I notice people are asking a lot of questions about. Speeding is a big topic, right? So what are the OPP doing about speeding? We just had our OPP report not too long ago. So, that's something that I've got the information in a report. So I'd like to put it out there so people have that information. And then, that's kind of some of how I'm using it and managing some of these things. When I was in marketing, I believed strongly in, knowing what your community is saying and your customer and monitoring comments. I don't do that quite as actively anymore. So we have I'm in a lot of community groups on Facebook, and I no longer pay as close attention there to what's being said, because again, I think if your concern is, if you're really concerned with something, you need to take it to the proper channels to. Yep, that isn't complaining about it on a community Facebook group, unfortunately. Right. So yeah, that's for me.
Thank you. Yeah, Kristin.
Yeah, social media is an interesting one. I think I used it in 2018. I relied on it a lot, really, for my campaign, and because I had a really grassroots campaign, spent very little, to work towards being elected. Shortly after the election, I found myself on Tuesday evenings after council, just kind of like perusing the comments and just getting a little bit too absorbed into what people were saying. And I actually deleted Facebook probably like 4 years ago now. Because it didn't seek to serve me, right? So I think just being aware of the things that are, within, that are serving you well, and things that just don't do it for you. So although social media is an amazing place to share information, there are some other avenues that I do use. I use LinkedIn to share. I also use Instagram. I love Instagram. I can do like quick videos and just get information out, and Twitter. But in terms of Facebook, I think within our community in Northern Ontario, people are quite harsh. And I think I heard another elected official who I sit on the Ontario Good World Association board with, and he had mentioned too, like the electorate the dynamics have shifted and changed, right? So the respect that elected officials once had is no longer there, right? This idea that we need to be available at a moment's notice, and we need to follow all of these rules because someone voted for you, right? And I think if there's many people that voted, but we just don't have the ability to really communicate in a way with every single one in the way that people want or expect of us, So I got off of Facebook. I tried to get back on again for the 2022 election, and I didn't remember my password. So these things change, and I thought, to heck with it. I didn't miss it, and if I'm going to try to now get back on in order to get votes, that's not necessarily genuine either. So I did without it, and I get by in a different way, and it's really about connecting with individuals differently. And I like what Jen said too, just about sharing information that the city has prepared. So if there is something, because it's coming right from the community, right? So I'm not watering it down and just giving a version of it. It's, we collectively have to share messages on behalf of the community, not water them down or make them sound as though we invented some type of commentary, but really you have to get into a mindset of working with the other councillors as a group, as a collective. And I think another part of that too, when I think about social media, I think about, and we had this conversation as we were talking on the weekend, and mentorship is really important too. And I do want to highlight the importance of mentors here, because I don't want to miss it in our conversation. But I do know that, since becoming a politician, there's conversations that I can't necessarily have with, friends or family or people on social media, because they don't get it. So I do reach out to other elected officials, whether they be First Nation leaders or individuals who are on council or previously, just to make sure that I'm staying grounded and I have a platform to be able to share some of the things that I'm faced with as an elected official, because not everyone gets it, right? I think we have a different way of handling situations where, somebody might attack us verbally, and our friends might say, well, yell at them back. Well, that doesn't happen when you're a politician, right? So you navigate situations a little differently, and your fellow politicians will really understand and assist you with navigating. So I know it was sort of off topic, but I wanted to mention that before we ended the conversation.
Well, thank you. And mentors are very critical. We need sounding boards that can have a little bit of experience and understand where you're coming from, but also understand that there's only so much you can share anyway. Lynn, did you want to add anything, or?
Just that, you have to resist the urge. Like if you go on a community platform and there's something that's like blatantly, absolutely false, and you're like, I am tempted to like, well, no, it's actually this. But I step away from the keyboard, because I'm not the social media police, and people who are on social media a lot must understand that it's not truth. The only time I ever respond is if somebody would tag me and say, is this true? Then I would respond. That's the only time I respond.
Right.
I don't get, because the moment you engage, then you're going down a rabbit hole, and then it's going to go this way, and then it's going to go this way. And, honestly, you'd never get anything else done. So I think the misinformation is going to be there, whether you like it or not. And then if somebody comes to a trusted source to ask, the truth, and then they get the truth, sometimes it self-corrects anyway. But you just have to resist that urge to try to be social media truth advocate.
Mm-hmm. And there are trolls on social media that if you don't recognize the name, they're probably just trying to fish you in. And but to your point, Lynn, if they've tagged you, you're almost obligated to respond somehow, whether it's by phone or in a message. I would like, we've got about, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We have about 3 minutes. And we have 3 questions that came into the chat. We'll just do them really quick. How do you act? This goes back to a couple of our questions. How do you actually step away from work, take a vacation, and leave it behind? Or do you? Lynn's looking away. Is it impossible, Lynn?
No, it's not. It's not. You just have to make yourself do it. You just have to do it. And you put your out of office, and everybody goes on vacation. Everybody's entitled. You just have to make, and Yeah, and the worst part now is even when you're on vacation. I had a counselor who traveled to Portugal this week, and he's saying, well, I'll try to Zoom in. I said, don't you dare. Like, have a vacation and come back happy, and we'll fill you in.
Right, right. And you make sure that your designate, your deputy mayor or whomever, your CAO, everybody is there to pick up the pieces while you're away. The next one is, have you ever had anyone approach you that just won't take not now for an answer? In the grocery store, perhaps?
Yeah, I do have an individual locally here who, and it's really unique too because he loves to chat, and like I said earlier, I'm not one to sort of end the conversation abruptly, and he doesn't look too far, so he knows my comings and goings. He knows I have kids. He knows I have a dog, and I think, yeah, it's just an interesting dynamic. But I had a friend over one day, and he came to my door. This gentleman who lived, and that was the first time someone had ever come to my house, and I just remember feeling a little violated because, you know, I see this person in community, which is fine, but when someone comes to your house and you're not prepared, it was just a little bit surprising. But luckily, I had a friend over who happened to be a male, and so that was the first and last time he ever came to my door. It was just like it happened, maybe perfect timing, because I feel like I have protective factors up when I'm, you know, navigating, especially with my children. If people come up and, you know, they're inappropriate or whatnot, like I do have, you know, the discernment to be able to sort of redirect. But in that instance, and I probably went off on a tangent because you asked me a question, then I went in another direction, but I felt I needed to share that for some reason.
Well, we're here having a conversation. It's like we're sitting around the kitchen table, just brainstorming. It was how do you handle that individual who just won't say, who won't take the not now, please reach out to me at a later time? Have you ever?
Yeah, I definitely had to have those kinds of conversations, and even just a smooth sort of goodbye. And I think there was one instance where somebody had wanted to argue with me, and I just said, we're going to have to agree to disagree. And I just sort of faded the conversation out, and I said it like I have to leave. And I still feel a little bit icky for having to do that, but I was put in a position where I didn't really have an alternative. And people will be faced with that, right? You don't know how someone is going to present to you, whether they're going to be, you know, sober or not, whether they're going to be aggressive or not, or relentless, right? So there's that, and luckily it doesn't happen too often in person or online, but there are instances. You know, I've been in politics for a little over 4 years, which is, you know, a short time in comparison to Lynn. But I think, you know, if once you start to really stay true to who you are, and you know, don't take any form of either abuse or aggressiveness, people will come to learn how to approach you and how to communicate and interact.
Then there's one last question. I'm going to quickly get this in. What's the rule on talking business with your family at home?
No. My kids have been amazing. Really, they've grown up with it. I said my son was 3 and my daughter was 5 when I started, and so they've lived this their whole lives. And so yeah, they're not interested. Like, it's so funny. My daughter actually toyed with the idea of running for council where she lives, and then quickly decided no. They were the ones when, you know, they'd pick up the phone at home and there'd be some angry person on the phone. They wouldn't wait to hear if it was, you know, my child or not. They'd just start yelling. So yeah, I keep it away from home unless it's like something fun that's going on. But yeah, I try to leave it at work. And I just find that I spend so much time thinking about it. I don't want to think about it when I'm at home. They're my escape. And that's, I want to talk about their lives. So yeah, I try not to do that. If I need to run something off somebody, I'll pick one of my AMO buddies or friends that I know, and I'll say, you know, this happened to me, what happened to you? Because they get it. Like, they live this life too. So I would rather discuss it with a colleague or a mentor than with my family.
Great, thanks. Well, folks, that ends our question and answer part of tonight's session. But before we go, I'd like to give an opportunity to each of our panelists to say a few final words to our audience. I'm going to go to Mayor Lynn Dollin first.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Kristin and Jen. I love listening to young women, young politicians. I definitely get more than I give in these conversations, so thank you for that. Thank you also to Elect Her Now. I already told this story once before we went on air, but I'll tell it again. So today I was at Simcoe County. We were having this great orientation session, not only with the county councillors, but with all of the members of the local municipalities. And I had this woman run up to me and say, I know you were on Elect Her Now on a panel. And I couldn't remember it was, I heard you say 2021. And she said that she'd been considering running for council. After that panel, she decided she was going to go for it, and she was elected. So what you're doing is working, and thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you, Lynn. Kristin Murray?
I just want to thank everyone who's come out and spent their evening with us. You know, it's always amazing. And, you know, for me being way up north, this is always a great opportunity to connect when people invite me to Zoom sessions, because we're a small group of women, and we're trying to recruit more in a good way, because I think, you know, we have to definitely show up and take our place, our rightful place. So in any way that I can support, and others who I've met along the way, this isn't the first time I've been online with Lynn, so I think it's always amazing to connect again. And I thank Laura for reaching out to me way back when to really share and showcase some of the work that Elect Her Now is doing. And Politics Now, I think, is in Sudbury, so there's another group that I'm connected with as well. So we're making a lot of moves, and I'm really happy to be a part of the process. And I you know, highly recommend individuals who are on the call or thinking about running, reach out. You know, we're very approachable individuals, and would definitely give you as much guidance and support as you need. So thank you, Barbara, for moderating today. It's been a wonderful, and thanks to Jen and Lynn for my, you know, keeping the dialogue going and having some great conversation.
Well, it certainly has been my pleasure too, Kristin, and we're becoming a family. So if you're ever down this way, know that your extended families would love to meet up with you. Jennifer Christie Shaw, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what more is there to say? I also have found these events to be super helpful. The first one was all sorts of questions that I didn't even know to ask, and I took so much away from the first event, and this one as well. I think we as women get a lot of pressure put on us to be all things, and when we are in leadership positions, I feel like there's lots of pressure and expectations. So to have such a great group that is available to bounce ideas off of and to learn from, and to have as mentors in this role is invaluable. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be involved. Thank you for inviting me, and Kristin and Lynn and Barbara for being part of the event tonight. There was a time I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to be here, so I'm so grateful that it worked out and that I could be. So thank you again and to the organizers and the advisory panel behind the scenes for all the work you do to keep Elect Her going. Such a great organization.
Thank you. And so thank you, Lynn, Kristin, and Jennifer, for participating this evening and for sharing your wisdom and experience. I'd also like to thank all of the volunteers that were helping behind the scenes, making sure the technology continued to work, their expertise, and just making sure this evening was everything that it could be. Elect Her Now is a community volunteer organization committed to more diverse representation in the future. We're working hard to break down barriers so that more people will participate at this level of government, whether it's as an elected official or in support of those who serve. As you know, tonight's event is open to all and offered with no financial barrier. If you haven't done so already and are able to do so, please consider making a donation to Elect Her Now to help cover our costs in the amount that works for you. So we hope that you will join us for our third session on April 25th, and we will say goodnight for now.